Hello, everyone. I hope and pray that you're doing well. Um, there is a wedding going on in my family this summer. We're super excited about that. Um, and Ella is more of a green thumb than I am. And she's got some flowers here on the go for the wedding. And there's some vegetables and the like. Basil in the background smells like summer, although the rain doesn't quite feel like summer. But it kind of reminds me that a few years ago we did in the church, we had this series where we talked about um, the garden kingdom language that helps tell the biblical story, right? Planting and then invading and then reclaiming and then flourishing. Maybe you're used to kind of the telling the biblical story and kind of the creation, fall, redemption, restoration kind of theme. But we talked about the fall and the creation and the fall and the redemption and new creation in those kind of garden images, right? So when God plants the garden in the beginning, His creativity is begins, and then the fall had this kind of invasion because sin and death weren't native to God's creation, and invasive species come in the way, and they kind of help us understand that we too are kind of humans as carriers of sin and death kind of into the good garden of God. Then we talked about reclaiming, right? How God's redemption is like this reclamation project. Not only reclaiming overgrown or trashed land, but also God reclaiming a people created to serve in the garden in the very first place. And then we looked ahead to new creation and flourishing and the restoration part of the story and leaning forward longingly for this flourishing. And in the book of Revelation, we encounter this garden kingdom that overflows with life, the streets of hammered gold and gates made of jewels and this river flowing through the city. And maybe the rain's kind of giving us a bit of an extra picture of that. But this river flowing through the city with the tree of life planted and producing a new crop every month. And then earthly kings bringing their treasures into the city of God. Now, I've got some planters here. To no credit of myself, they're cute and they're tidy and the dirt's clean and there aren't any weeds in them yet, and they're very full of promise. And one day, everything which threatens to diminish life in God's garden kingdom, everything like that is going to be removed. And what's going to remain is this flourishing life of God, spilling over into the life of God's people and spilling over into the rest of creation. And this is the arc of the biblical story, right? Planting, invading, reclaiming, and then this flourishing. And so along with the Old Testament prophets, we long for this wholeness and this peace and this flourishing. And we work certainly towards these things here on earth, because we're also confident, not so much in ourselves, but in the plan of God to do this. And because God reigns, and because tomorrow is Ascension Day, we know that He's on the throne, that God's in control, and that God is making all things new. And so as the prophet Amos announces, also I will restore the captivity of my people Israel, and they will rebuild the ruined cities and live in them. They'll also plant vineyards and drink of their wine and make gardens and eat their fruit. I mean, all this from from a bunch of dirt, but God can and will and does a new thing. The peace of Christ be with you all.